So are we back then?
We are
yes.
back.
I think we're back.
Cool.
I think we're back.
Wonderful.
Do we want to discuss the responses that we got to people's personal favorite sharpeners and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Yes,
of course.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to actually say that I don't know how to pronounce this dude's name at all. There's too many consonants and no vowels. But it's SMRKEC SMRK.
All right.
So that's how. I'm going to apologize because that's a lot of consonants. I guess there's one vowel right in the middle. It's very Russian. They like whetstones and a strop, which really, at the end of the day, you can do a lot of things with a whetstone and a strop.
Sure
If
can.
you know what you're doing.
Freehand is how I do most of my stuff. So
Yeah.
That's it. And I would say that whetstones, mouse pad, and sandpaper, essentially they're the same kind of practice, right? You're finding that angle and you're doing it by hand. Even taking a stone to the edge and working that way, or a paddle and working that way, you've got to know what the hell you're doing.
well, and I think we all use strops on a regular basis. So
yeah.
I have
I don't know
one
if you can
kicking
see
around here somewhere. Yeah. Literally a piece of an old leather belt.
Yeah. I got this thing going on, which, as you can tell, has a bunch of brand new compound on it because, sharpening and all that. Get over there. Zinc CDC, this is actually one that's very interesting to me because we have it in the shop and it's not something that I see a bunch of people jumping on. But Zinx actually uses the Work Sharp Field Sharpener.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And we carry
That's
the
not a
bench
bad
version.
tool.
No, there we go. As far as a sharpening system that you can throw in your bag, like the double stuff and things like that, that still gives you a guided system, so you can, I won't say cheat, but something that kind of gives you confidence in your ability to keep that angle.
Yeah.
It aids you.
Yes. And the fact that every single section of it, it's not just the diamond plates that have that angle. The ceramic rods have it. Even the strop is set up with an angle to bring your knife up and over the strop with. It's
as far as a take it and go system it goes. I can't think of much better. As far as you're uninitiated to sharpening, but you need a sharp knife, and you're not going to be at home for whatever reason. That's a great solution.
I think the pocket knives in particular too. I think when you're getting up to something like a 10-inch carving knife or a 10-inch chef's knife or like a bigger machete, something like that, field sharpener, you can maybe pop the plates out because they are magnetic, and you can pop them out, maybe use them like files to do bigger stuff. But actually on the sharpener, EDC in particular, I think is where that pocket sharp shines more than anything else, for sure.
Even in so far as small little fixed blades and stuff like that, day hike sized.
This weird Ika knife that Paul just has scope carry for no reason.
What are you hating on, man? This thing's bloody wicked. It's similar kind of checkering to that Paul lock that you got. What is it? Is it the Defender?
I'm still jealous you have that.
Yeah, that one right
bastard.
there.
Okay, for the record, though, you have a Gerber that's actually more collectible.
I do.
It's older and rarer. Yeah,
I love this thing.
So, you can get over yourself because I have a Defender.
I like the Defender though.
I was going to say, I don't care about the collectability. I want to carry that Defender. That thing's gorgeous, especially with those wooden grips.
And they came with interchangeable. They had G10N wood with that one. And G10 on, you were a silly bastard. So
the wood checkering on that thing, it's like a classy old revolver though. I mean, you'd be insane to use anything else on it.
CS Graves, it's awesome. We this week we've gotten a bunch of people that haven't commented in the past. Just a shout out to everybody that did comment this week. Thanks a lot, guys. But he says he uses the KME because he can't freehand without making a mess of his eyes, which is a fair argument.
Yeah.
I actually started on the Lansky, which is not a KME by any stretch, but because I didn't feel confident in my ability to hold that angle myself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and like I said, the KME is, there's always got to be like kind of one system that everyone rips off. And I mean, you can say it was the Lansky, but I think the KME and the Wicked Edge kind of like took it from there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The KME and the Wicked Edge improved on. They didn't just copy over.
I think they're the reason why there's clones, is because of the success of those companies in particular. So you got to give them credit on the reason that there's a million clones out there that are now starting to become similar systems that you can use, right? So, yeah, for sure.
That's it. Not surprising, Ahsoka Edge uses the Edge Pro as well as diamond and aluminum abrasives. And then he strops on, let's see what he actually said here. His comment was longer than I can actually see in this thing. He strops on diamond compound coated leather, which I've heard the DBK guys talk about their diamond compound.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious about how good that stuff. Yeah, it's a spray on. You know, that's the definition of spray, right?
I've tried I've tried 2 different diamond sprays, and neither one have impressed me. So I'm waiting for a diamond spray that actually does impress me compared to a compound. But a compound so far has impressed me much, much more than any of the diamond sprays I've played with.
It's a shame, actually, that Ahsoka's not in the chat today with us, because I would love to hear which brand he uses as a potential, like, hey, try this one.
Yeah. And I think mine is a DMT, one of the sprays. And then I tried another spray that I can't remember where I got it from. Probably someone who gave it to me from Lee Valley or something, but I don't remember the brand. Yeah. Like I said, compared to the compounds, so far, the compounds seem to just be that much more effective, especially when you're getting into a super steel, to rip off burrs on a super steel and clean up things like that. I don't know, man. Some of those pastes, you need to be aggressive, right? So
that actually surprises me a little bit, because you would figure that like diamond plates tend to work better on a lot of those fancy super steels because they're harder than that steel is. The fact that the compound doesn't work as well, like the spray-on diamond compound doesn't work as well, is shocking, kind of.
Well, and just to rip the burr off, right? Do that polish and rip the burr off. And when it comes to actually ripping a burr off, there's some steels that just, I have found that you need just like a thick abrasive compound, like one of the higher grit ones.
Something that's going to be a little grabby.
I play with M4. Yeah. Like, ultimately, and I'm going to call that one out, that, I mean, when you're trying to diamond strop some of the M4s, I just found I don't get as good of a finish as I do with some of the coarser compounds. So,
have you ever? Sorry, go for it.
I was going to say, when Nigel did the reprofile on his bailout, the compound that he stropped it with to kind of polish out that work, it came out gorgeous. Like,
let's see if we can get a
there we
focus on there, and it's not as polished as it could be because it's been used since. Come on,
but
yeah,
still, like it's that compound did a pretty damn good job of getting rid of all those scratches.
And I think with most, like, probably geometry as well, when you're working with convex edges and you're trying to rip a burr off of an M4 or a 3V on a convex edge compared to a hollow grind or something like that, it probably comes into play on geometry, on how easy it is to strop those particular things because of the geometry, how beefy the burr is on either side, things like that. I don't know. I'm just theorizing because I'm not Devin Thomas's son. So,
have you, Dennis, have you, or I guess anybody here, have you tried stropping off a burr using a piece of hardened steel? Like specifically a honing rod or anything similar?
Yes, a little bit with a honing steel. Yes. And I found that I just enjoy a strop more. A honing steel, especially on hard burrs, likes to hang up a little bit. Whereas I find a strop with compounds are much more forgiving. So I've tried steels I'm in a resort somewhere like Mexico or snowboarding or something, and I have no other option to clean these up before I try to use the kitchen knives because we're in a timeshare or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
in those kind of situations, but not in a day-to-day. Like, even my kitchen knives just get struck, right? So
fair enough.
I think there's something to be said too about taking like a piece of wood and setting up your knife and running it through that piece of wood to tear the burr off as well. No? Because I've used it a few times where that burr just wants to flop back and forth, but you kind of can force it and like almost pile it up on itself and rip it off the edge of that knife.
I've done that occasionally, and usually it's just a scrap bit of wood I have lying around the shop or somewhere at home, and it can take a while, but it is more gentle on the edge, I find as well. Like there's less. Sometimes when I take a burr off, I'll use a piece of hardened steel as a hone, and normally it does a fantastic job. But sometimes it'll just take like not a chip, but like a microchip almost out of the end of the edge. Then I have to go back and retouch it up. Whereas with wood, I find if it's a hard enough wood, I don't have that problem as much, especially with stuff like 1095 or VG10, and those, you know, even steels like S30. I haven't had too many failures in that regard, but I don't know. I
was going to say the only steel that you should be putting into that piece of wood at any point in time is the S30, because like the VG10 and like what was the other one you mentioned? Sorry.
1095.
1095. Yeah, you should be able to get a burr that basically peels off with those particular steels.
Yeah.
But S30, and when you're getting into some of the powder steels and stuff like that, I can understand. The other thing with putting it into a piece of wood is any sort of abrasion resistance. So you have to consider how much you might be dulling the knife at the same time you're ripping the burr off.
Yeah.
Like what kind of trade-off have you got? Wood carving ultimately is what you're doing.
Right. And
how
actually,
much of that are you going to? Yeah.
And in that mindset, I'll actually use a piece of wood as you would a strop or a hone. And instead of biting into the wood, just taking the edge and running alongside it to gently force that burr off. I find that's a less invasive way to do it. Maybe there's something. I'd almost like to try taking a piece of wood, putting some cutting compound onto it, like just a really, really fine paste of some sort, and seeing what sort of results we could get out of that. Wood would probably break down.
Nice.
Sorry?
I've used wood as strops before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Me and Nigel have both experienced 3V out in the woods with our bark rivers, and you can strop it on a piece of wood and bring 3V back fantastically. I also know that there is pure balsa wood, because balsa is very, very light and airy and whatever. And especially
hold the compound nicely.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you put compounds on balsa wood in particular, it works quite well as a compound. I'm surprised you're not up on this, Joe. Come on.
That sounds useful as hell.
Yeah, I genuinely think I might run over to Home Depot and grab some balsa wood just to play with.
Get with time, guys. Like seriously, it's 2020. We have knifesteelnerds.com. Like, how do you not know these things?
Absolutely. Which you should all go and support, by the way. Just saying.
Hell yeah, you should. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic resource when it comes to trying to understand the steels that you're using and how to use them in the future. Whether it's, you know, a pocket knife that you've bought yourself that you're resharpening, or something that you're making and being like, okay, how far can I take this? We actually have two gentlemen, both Emerson 1095 and Tom's, that both said that they use their Spyderco, and if it kind of starts to not be working, or if they're doing something that they don't want to use, like get a hard secondary bevel on, say like a bark river or something like that, that's when they pull out their whetstones. Same kind of idea with the sandpaper, where you can kind of Scandi-Vex your edge and get a nice sharp edge where there's no visible secondary bevel.
Well, and I'm just saying, especially with the convex and the bark river stuff, break out the 400 and the 600 grit sandpaper, and especially on their base models that have the A2, and you can fix a lot of damage to A2 in very quick succession with pardon me, a 400 or a 600 grit.
Yeah. And then Mr. Fisk jumped in again, ever the comedian, with he just goes out and buys himself a new knife, which I've known people to do that.
I can tell from his feed that he is 100% correct in that statement. He is not afraid to come home with a new toy.
That is true. That is true.
What, the newest one, is it a Ray Olsen custom, the Damasteel with the carbon fiber, just like straight up classy clip point that Mr. Fisk has? Gotta call that out.
Gorgeous knife. It must still be sharp because it's still in his collection, though.
I suppose. Well, I don't think he sells them. He probably just uses them less because they're dull, right?
Hey.
So
it's, I don't know if he does it with anybody else, but Mr. Fisk will regularly send me a video where he's just randomly stabbing a cardboard box. I get them 3 or 4 times a week.
Fair enough.
It's mainly for his cat's entertainment, I'm sure. Like,
that's exactly it, right?
That's probably because he considers Paul one of his cats. So
I really am glad that Nigel's Photoshop skills aren't good enough to make me look like the movie Cats.
Oh, we don't need that. Nobody needs that.
No. Moving on to people's favorite knife of 2020.
Ooh.
We got some pretty good answers here.
I'm curious about this one.
Right off the hop, Given PNW jumped in with the mini bug out. Which is a fun little one. And again, it's a knife that's hard to keep on the shelf, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of aftermarket scales, I showed Paul a picture of, I believe it's Aramis from over in Russia. And he's got some carbon fiber scales for the blacked out bug out. And with a black blade and carbon fiber scales, that little thing looks pretty freaking sweet. Like it's,
I can see that, yeah.
I think we all know at this point how I feel about coated blades, and I'm not usually the biggest fan of them. And I really liked that blacked out version with the carbon fiber scales. It just looked classy as hell.
So again, with the bug out platform, how popular the aftermarket stuff is, there already is mini aftermarket stuff out there if you want to pimp out your mini bug out already, right? So yeah.
That's it. This one's actually really like fresh off the presses. Nick.m.89 is saying the Benchmade 535 BK-2001, which is the new bug out red scales international exclusive. I had to go and look it up last night just so I knew.
Right.
My question is, how does he know about that knife? I know about that knife. Some people here know about that knife, but
yeah, I don't know how they know about it. Maybe they have a friend in the scene or something like that. But
I don't know if that one's been officially announced. But yes, there is a Deadpool bug out about to be released. So
if it hasn't been announced yet, it was his fault.
We didn't leak it.
The police are coming.
But I believe it's red handle black blade. It's still S30. I don't know how many pieces are made yet because it is that new on the market. But I'm pretty sure if you Googled that number, that knife came up, right, Paul?
It sure did, yeah.
So it is already out.
It's out somewhere, whether it's on Instagram or...
The Googles has it. The Googles has got it. So it's not us. It's not us that are spoiling secrets, even though that's fresh off the boat, for sure.
Yeah. Ahsoka Edge jumped in with the Hinderer non-flipper XM18 3-inch spear point, which is kind of a mouthful. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know a huge amount about Hinderer knives, so I don't know which model that is.
I do. The new Hinderers are nice, and I know where it's coming from with the spear point, but the slip jointy one, I don't know. I don't know about that.
The 20 CV slip jointy? 20 CV blue G10 handles, I think?
Yeah, and it's got a couple different blade shapes.
Wasn't that
I think that's the knife you're talking about.
Patty on YouTube has those Patty's potato peelers.
Mm.
He's got one of those, which makes sense, him being in the UK. But yeah, it's weird.
He's Irish, isn't he? Isn't he in Ireland?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is kind of not the UK.
Right.
Well,
Like Northern Ireland.
He's dropped the phrase UK legal a number of times in his videos, so I just kind of
fair enough.
Put that.
I believe knife laws entail pretty much all of the United Kingdom, not just England. So
no, I understand that, but you can get some Irish folk real upset if you call them part of Great Britain.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference between like Britain, Great Britain, and the UK, and I can't remember what all the different distinctions are. And
what I
piss people off if you use it wrong.
What I say is meant with absolutely zero offense, more so that I just think it was UK legal. That was the phrase that was used.
But yes, with the slip joint, it would be, if anything, for sure.
Exactly, right?
But yeah, I will say Hinder has come a long way in the last even 3 years. Interchangeable pivot systems with the ball bearings and the bushings and the Teflon, depending on what you're rocking. Like that alone speaks to the.
Oh no!
Skills Nigel.
For a moment.
We lost Nigel. Man down.
It speaks to the evolution of what Hinderer is going through, and I really like the direction they're going through. But again, they're just in that like Sabenza price rangey blah 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 that we haven't dabbled in them a bunch, other than Chris Yandel, which I don't know if he'll ever join us live, but he's on Instagram as well, and he lets me play with Hinderers, and so do a couple other gentlemen from the show.
He's got at least one really pretty Hinderer.
The fire attack, I think, is what he's got, and it's pretty nice. And the action is pretty smooth, which you couldn't say. It's kind of like Emerson. 5 years ago, you couldn't say that an Emerson was smooth because that shit didn't exist, right? And now it does. And just like a Hinderer, now, like even on Teflon or bronze, he's still producing some pretty smooth stuff. So
that's it. We just gained a viewer, so that's pretty cool. And then we lost them. Never mind. They're gone.
Oh, no.
Bye.
He didn't like what I had to say.
Literally, I looked over. It was 6. I looked back. It was 5. Like it was that quick.
He's like, Hinderer is a powerhouse. How dare you slag on him a decade ago when he didn't know how to make a knife?
There are some pretty vitriolic. There's some pretty explosive fanboys online. I mean, as with any brand, but Hinderer. Yeah, there's a couple that it's just eyebrow raising, some of the claims they're making.
Most definitely. Emerson 1095, also Will to Survive in the YouTube chat here, mentioned the Benchmade Auto 940, which I think as a Canadian, we're all really sad that we can't play with that thing.
Yep.
I think if given the option, if it was legal in Canada, I'd probably own one. Because I love the 940, and being able to just sit there and auto it open all the time would be a hell of a lot of fun.
A non-axis lock version of the 940, and on top of that, a button lock version of the 940. I need that in my life at some point.
That's right up Joe's.
We got super jacked up about a 940 auto last week, and we talked about it. And it's out there this week. But I think it's overshadowing, and I looked at some of the 940 autos or some of the Benchmade autos recently, and I don't remember what number it was, but it was the Autocrat.
Yes.
That they came out with at the beginning of the year. That was very
nice.
Osborne-like in the blade shape, but
S90.
all blacked out with an S90.
Yeah. And it's slim.
And for a similar price point of what the 9400 is going to be, because they're playing off of the 9400. I would take one of those. Is it an Autocrat?
I'm pretty sure. I just watched a Blade HQ video this morning, and I think it was the Autocrat. It looks like Nigel's searching it up here, so we'll know it for sure in a moment. But yeah, it's
like I was saying,
G10 Button
That's
lock.
a 940
It's-
auto that kicks the crap out of an actual 940 auto. And I bet you they're going to be very similar price points with an S90 compared to an S30 because of what they're taking advantage of.
Yeah, the autocrat is a OTF.
Oh, so
That's
it's not the auto.
S30.
Okay, so it's not the autocrat then. My mistake. But it's an A something.
I bet you if you typed in Benchmade S90 auto, it's probably one of the only S90 autos that are out there right now.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And giggity, holy cow. Like, I just watched a video the other day. I was like, oh, I'd take that over a 940 auto any day of the week. Nothing against, because I call my 940-1 still the GOAT.
Oh,
say.
I was totally wrong. It's a mediator.
S90, though.
Mediator.
Yeah, I just found it.
My bad, guys. Can we just throw a picture up? Can someone? You got it on your phone, Joe?
Yeah, I'll bring it up on my phone.
You did last time, and it actually worked out really well for like when you blocked out the screen enough, people could see it, right? So
Right.
Anyway, that's my rant.
In the meantime, while he's doing that, I'm going to mention that Tom's is talking about the ProTech SBR, which after he looks this one up, I'm going to get him to look up that one too, because I don't know what the SBR looks like. Okay.
That's washing it out, though. I need a better background.
Why does that remind me of the Access, the H&K Access?
It's got a little bit of that. It's a 940. It's even got a little bit of that new launch that Kershaw came out with. It's like a hybrid between the new launch and the 940 type of thing, right? Like,
yeah.
And a ProTech, I'm pretty sure that's the ProTech that Tom's has, which is also an auto. And good for him that he can play with it, but I'm not sure which one that is either.
Can you look up the ProTech SBR, Joe?
The SPR?
SBR.
SBR.
V is in Victor or B is in Bravo?
Bravo. SBR, like short barrel rifle.
There you go. The ones that are illegal now? Yeah.
Yes.
Trying to angle this on camera.
Okay. I mean, as far as ProTechs go, that's inoffensive. I like that.
I've seen that one on Tom's page, and it's a sexy looking knife, for sure. Yeah.
And then Mr. Fisk jumped in with his favorite knife of 2020 is the Sebenza 21.
He's such a dick.
I don't... Yeah.
In that vein, though, he did send me a video of some surprising lock rock in the new 31s.
Yeah.
Disgusting. Disgusting is the right word for it.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree that if you force on a frame lock, there is a certain amount of give based off of the way that the lock flexes.
You guys were talking about that earlier, and I didn't play with... My Sliz Bowie is as rock solid as can be. There is nothing wrong with
no. But the
you got to put it down on a surface.
The actual test is to have the handle completely supported and then pressing down on the back of the handle, then pressing down on the blade. For the record, not only does my Sebenza have that flex, but so does literally every other frame lock that I have that I've tested, lock insert or not, and so did every single liner lock. Funnily enough, all of the liner locks did better than the frame lock. Like,
that actually surprises me.
Far less movement. For whatever reason.
Okay, there is like so much of a hint of a touch of movement when I do it on my Sleesh with a wood surface, is what I just tested it on with my Sleesh buoy.
Right.
And it's so much so that I actually have to like hold the blade and hold the handle to even feel any sort of flex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
that's the
micro of micro flexes.
That's the point of the test, I think. And in all honesty, you're never going to put that kind of pressure on both the back of the handle of a knife and the blade in use, or even by accident.
Yeah.
I can't. That's just not going to happen.
That's it.
So I think, honestly, it's kind of a meaningless test. If you were to give me the new Sebenza and I could get that kind of flex by doing it in my bare hands, then maybe there would be a discussion about, hey, you need to change your lock interface because clearly this sucks. But until I see somebody do that and it being replicated across multiple different instances, I don't think it's really that much of an issue.
So here's the other question. Do you think it's ever going to get to the point where it's actually going to break a stop pin?
Break a stop pin. It's not. It has nothing to do with a stop pin. You're moving to the close position. So what do you?
It's flexing down.
Yeah. What do you mean by stop pin?
But the point of failure, if that knife is going to fail when you're doing something,
pushing in the other direction would be the lock pin. Yeah.
When it comes to flex on that lock bar, the only way that knife is going to fail is if you're doing something and the lock pin fails and it breaks backwards. Because that lock flex doesn't prove anything other than the stop pin might be adding pressure.
Well,
so in a real life situation, how is that knife going to fail that's going to be a hazard to you other than the stop pin breaking?
No, again, I think it's two different issues. The stop pin isn't going to be the stop pin isn't being acted upon when you're putting downwards pressure on the blade. The stop pin, with the lock disengaged, there's no engagement with the pin. The only way the pin is engaged is if you're pressing into something and your blade locks up. I think they're two different issues. I'm trying to understand what you're saying about the stop pin coming into play here.
Yeah.
If you're using a knife and you're putting pressure on it, you're putting pressure back into the lock pin, is what Dennis is saying.
You're putting equal amounts of pressure on what you're cutting into.
I still don't get how opposite forces will affect the opposite side, is what it sounds like you're saying. It doesn't make sense, really.
Well, when you're actually using a knife.
But when we're talking about the flex in the lock bar, what does the stop pin do? How does that interaction, that is where I'm not getting the...
Sorry, where I'm thinking where the flex is going to go in a real life situation, that's where your failure is going to be.
Yes.
If that blows out. And if it doesn't blow out, then it doesn't matter if there's flex or not.
Yes, exactly.
But
it's kind of what I'm saying.
But people are worried about the
lock
flex.
Bar won't have any effect on the lock pin, or the lock pin won't have an effect on the lock bar if the lock bar is flexing, though.
Yeah.
What Dennis is saying is the lock bar flexing doesn't matter because the forces are going in the opposite direction when you're actually using the knife.
And I think that's a non-issue. I mean, locking strength overall, generally speaking, is an overblown issue to begin with. I mean, make as much money as Cold Steel's making off of their Triad lock and all the marketing and the hype, you don't really need that strong of a lock in day-to-day use. So as far as people taking their Sebenzas and using them, Dennis, you're right. You're not going to see a failure in the lock bar slipping because somebody pressed too hard on the spine. You're going to see a failure because somebody was pressing too hard forward trying to force it through something. Unless somebody's being really stupid with their knife.
It would pull down on you, but in a real life situation, where is that ever going to happen? And I'm not arguing that the tolerances aren't there. I agree, especially with the Sebenza and the video that you showed us with the Sebenza, the tolerances should be there. Even with a Sleesh Bowie that's been highly overpriced because of Nick Shabazz, the tolerances should be there, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is in a real life functional situation,
it's a non-issue.
That's never going to affect your knife play in any sort of way.
The only way that comes into effect is if you have a knife out open and you turn and you hit something like, let's say, a metal racking. If you're working around metal racking and you hit it hard enough that the lock slips and it disengages, but that's not in use. That's you not being careful with your tool.
I was going to say that the only way in my mind that could play a part in normal usage is if there's enough flex in the lock bar that if you've got it in hand and you can feel it flexing in your grip.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a valid point of concern, but I have a hard time believing that any Sebenza, new or old, has that particular flex.
Mm-hmm.
I would be curious to see what a spine whack test produces with that knife as well. Whether you can whack it hard enough that it actually does fail, or if it holds solid.
Now, I will say,
solid even with that flex. Who the fuck cares?
My Benchmade North Fork. I was actually doing a show where I was getting up underneath the zip tie, putting it this way, and then popping the zip tie. and cutting the zip tie up underneath it and snapping it this way. And with my North Fork on the Access, and I don't know if that was my grip because it is a smaller knife and I might have been touching the Access lock or whatever it may be, right? But I got up underneath there and the knife bent 90 degrees, like so, with the handle.
That could have been pretty damn dangerous, yeah.
No, the blade was behind the zip tie, so it stopped right there, and I went, well, that kind of sucked. And I locked it back up again and proceeded to cut the zip tie off and used the knife for the rest of the weekend. But the only knife where I've ever had any sort of lock failure or like scared like that situation was in that motion with an Access lock, which I've done stupid things with an Access lock.
Yeah.
So
I think in that case, it probably was due to your grip. Something just a misplaced finger. And it's kind of funny when we're talking about the minute amounts of finger pressure needed to actuate locks. Most frame locks, there is an argument to be made that if you're holding it correctly, your finger actually will add tension to that lock and keep it from folding as easily. And I actually did
Screw
that.
You righty.
Well, no, even with your left finger. Look, even with your left finger, you're still squeezing that lock bar in position.
Hold it in.
And I actually did that test. I put pressure on the side as it was doing that flex test, and I got, even with like, I don't know how to quantify that, but less than a trigger pull on a standard hunting rifle, easily. And pressing downwards, I did not get the same flex, like maybe a 1/4 millimeter at most. So as far as people making a big deal out of it, no, they're just looking for reasons to complain.
Well, no. And having said that, when you're paying a high premium price, tolerances should be tighter.
Right.
Than what on
definitely if there's a graph about it, there's definitely a curve where people are complaining about it just to complain, and there's a point where it gets to a point where it's like, yeah, that's definitely something to complain about.
Yeah, and how much? And
I'm buying a Sebenza, I want it to be perfect.
Right.
Ultimately.
There was somebody, I cannot remember if this was on Blade forums, I read this, or on Instagram, but somebody somewhere had said that they got a reply from CRK, and they had said that amount of flex is due to the geometry of the lock bar itself, referring to the ceramic lockup. And they said that's essentially a feature. It's going to, that's the way it's going to flex.
If it flexes but doesn't fail, then I guess it's not an issue.
Okay, but having said that, I can understand Mr. Fiska's point where the 21 didn't have that.
Yeah.
So regardless of like
the
whether
21
it fails
does though.
Or not, why would you adjust it to have that inherent?
The 21. The 21 does though.
But to that extent.
I can get some pretty severe flex out of mine, and from the videos I've seen, it looks like it's maybe 75% as bad as with the ceramic ball. Like, it's pretty substantial. But again, every single one of I reiterate that every single one of my frame locks does that. Same with all my liner locks. I think it's just part of the nature of the design, part of the fact that you can press a lock bar at all, the fact that your finger pressure can overcome that lock bar at all, that's going to factor into that happening, right?
Access locks sometimes will have a little bit of up and down play based off of the type of lock they are as well. I think it's
I think up and down play falls into Benchmade's more than it should, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I do have Benchmades that are rock solid, but if they're going to have play, I expect up and down just as much as I expect left to right. And it sucks that I have to say that, but honestly, like the
truth is there. I just want to quickly shout out to Will to Survive. He's saying that the 940 was his first grail knife, so having a 940 auto is the reason, like, just kind of taking that grail knife and going to the next level with it, right?
F&A Cotton. And if next year they come out with a 940 auto gold class, that will be my grail knife regardless of whether I live in Canada or not, because you need to take a 940 auto and step it up a notch to be a 940-1 or something.
They need to release a 940 button lock just without the spring. Just make it a non-auto. For the people like Joe that don't like the access.
They just need to make the 940 in their customizer and make it available to Canada is what they need to do.
That as well, yes.
They just need to make their customizer available to Canada, full stop.
We've had that conversation before about why the 940 is not in the customizer, and I have my theories about that. But, I mean, yeah, the auto is a sweet knife. I think we're pushing 45 for this session, eh?
Shouldn't it be 30? 850? No, I guess you're right. You're right.
Yeah, we're at about 40.
Are we doing a quick pause here, or?
Well, first, just because of the hell of it, and I have a whole bunch of knives out, I'm going to do a gratuitous knife shot. Everyone else can too if they want, because someone mentioned it in like our first episode, and it made me chuckle. So here's a mirror polished Talwar, you sons of bitches.
Oh, goddamn.
Oh, it's got a misprinted blade, so it's 1 of 100, 1 of 10. I'm not 100% sure, but
yeah,
that's what life is about right there, gentlemen. That's what life is about.
Hey, Dennis, you want to hear some fighting words?
All right.
While we're talking about these fancy knives that we got, Will Can Survive has said he really doesn't like the 940-1. He bought one a week later. Just something about the carbon fiber. He just didn't like it.
Okay, that's fair. The only counter argument, I don't know if you can see it on my camera or not, is the fact that the middle gets significantly more polished than the sides do over time.
Yeah. Two-tone.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a nice wear to it.
Yeah, the two-tone.
Yeah.
So after 5 years of the fronts compared to the divots. But yeah, like I said, 3D slabs compared to contoured carbon fiber, I understand where he's coming from. But show me a 940 that performs like S90, other than the titanium one that just came out last year, which I would have bought if I didn't own this one already. So
it always surprises me how much carbon fiber will polish in a pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, for being such a tough, resilient material, it takes quite a hell of a shine.
Yeah. But I like the G10 940-2. Having said that, like, that's a sweet knife. I'd take it over the original 940.
Yeah. I like the flow-through design on it. Being able to just, like, blow your knife and get all the dust out of it there's something to be said about it.
Are we taking a quick break?
Yeah, we sure could.
So yeah, hang out in YouTube land. We will be back in a few moments for you. Freshen up your drinks and go powder your nose.
Got to refill. Got to refill my mind. Got to refill all those things.
We'll be right back with you, folks.
We don't need